So, good afternoon. It's very proud to be working for Clearview Intelligence at the moment. As you're probably aware from all the signs, we sponsored this event, and it kind of feels really good to partly be able to support this event. We've kind of watched it over the years, and we've kind of seen it grow, and it's really nice to be so involved in this, and it's kind of nice to nurture this for the benefit of the UK, basically. So, from my perspective, I'm really proud that we bit the bullet and sponsored the event. For those of you who don't know who we are, Clearview Intelligence, I could go through a whole load of detail. Basically, we provide a whole load of solutions around enabling traffic monitoring, reducing congestion, managing car parking, safety schemes, and so on. But I think an important thing is we're nearly 50 years old, so next year maybe we'll bring some birthday cake. But for the past 50 years, we've been designing and developing and manufacturing and installing and supporting solutions all over the UK in these different areas. And that kind of gives us a fairly unique view on kind of what's going on, I think. Many years ago, Benjamin Franklin said, in this world, nothing is certain except death and taxes. Always good to start on a positive note. So there's two things that, according to Benjamin Franklin, were the key things there, death and taxes. I'd like to add a third thing, and the thing that's always present is change. You are not going to avoid change. If we avoid change, everything stagnates and everything goes wrong. So death, taxes, and change. Now, a lot of those changes are driven by legislation, and there's often support for those changes to be made. There's often a financial support to get those moving. But how does the ITS industry deal with those changes? They can be quite disruptive and they can be quite short term. So as an industry, how do we deal with that? And how do we deploy schemes successfully and make sure that we actually do it repeatably? And I just want to kind of go through a few examples where I think it's actually gone particularly well. Active travel is one of those things that, there's a lot of legislation, a lot of change going on. And it's clear that the car is no longer king. So how do you get more active travel? How do you get people to cycle? And really the key there is that cyclists have to feel safe. And the simple thing would be just to widen all the roads and chuck a segregated cycle lane down to both sides of the road, job done. But in reality, that's never going to happen. It's just not possible. So how else can we encourage safe use of cycling? We've worked on a scheme in Hull, and we've had a really good relationship with the guys in Hull on a place called Stone Ferry Road. And what they were trying to do there was effectively maximise the road space, but at the same time minimise conflicts between cyclists and vehicles. Interestingly, we used existing technology here, but we've used it in an innovative way. And it's all about detecting active travel users. I want to show you a short video of Stone Ferry Road. So this is a view of Stone Ferry Road, and there's basically now trying to use the slightly widened footpath for both pedestrians and cyclists. You can see a cyclist coming along there. What Hull have done is done a special treatment across the bell mouth of the side turnings to try to enable cyclists to just go straight across. So they are the effectively priority users. But you can see there's a risk of a conflict with these large vehicles. So what we do is we detect the cyclist approaching the junction, and when we detect them, we flash our studs in the ground. We call them IRS2s. So here's a view from the cyclist perspective, cycling along, and you'll see we detect him and we start flashing those studs. So that warns the drivers, both on the main carriageway, but also from the side turning here, that there's a cyclist present. As the cyclist is going along, we detect it automatically. The cyclist can see that the studs are flashing, so he knows he's been detected, but also the driver can see it. Interestingly, we're also collecting a lot of active travel data here. We actually are collecting the number of pedestrians and the number of cyclists on that route, and we can actually deliver that information. So the guys from Hull actually can use that information to see whether this scheme has actually been successful and actually promoted active travel as they actually intended. So that's been a really interesting scheme, and a lot of people have been up and had a look at it, and it seems to be going particularly well. So that's active travel. How about sustainability? That's one of those things that really is being driven by the kind of net zero legislation. And it's driving significant change. Some of those changes around, for instance, the environmental impact of street lighting. There's huge impact there from the cost of the energy, but also the carbon from making the street lights, and from the cabling and the ducting and trenching and the power use and all the rest of it. But if you can't just remove street lighting. They're there for a reason more often than not. And there's a potential impact there on the whole kind of vision zero. If you start making the roads more dangerous by removing street lighting, what mitigating features can you put in place? Well, we have a solution for that too. You'd be surprised to know. We have our solar road studs. These are small devices sitting in the middle of the road. You might call them a cat's eye. Basically, they charge up during the day. As soon as it gets dark, they turn on. The great thing is they actually give you a much better view of the road in front. Instead of being able to see about 90 metres, which is the range of your headlights, you can see 900 metres. So you can see a hazard much further away. And importantly, they reduce the number of nighttime collisions. We've got sites where we've installed these studs and we've reduced the number of collisions there by over 70%. So if you're going to remove street lighting, potentially there's a solution here by actually improving the view of the junction. This is a view of a junction with our solar road studs, and you can see there how the road snakes off over towards the right. But you can also see on the left there that there's a slip road. You can see the green studs against the end of the slip road. So it gives the driver a lot more information. So they're actually very useful for improving the safety of a road. It's not only roads though. This is a scheme we did actually quite some time ago, 10, 12 years ago, and this is the Cambridge guided busway. Apparently it's the longest busway in the world. It's about 10 miles long. And there was a concern at the time, there was a risk that pedestrians and cyclists on the footpath might meander across into the guided busway, which clearly wouldn't be a good thing. As I said, this was put in 10, 12 years ago, and they recently did an audit and found that a few of the studs had failed. So rather than just replace the failed studs, they actually decided to replace all of them. And I think there's a news article gone out today that's actually announcing that the fact that Cambridgeshire have seen the value from these solar studs and they decided to replace them all along the whole 10 kilometres there, because it's a real benefit to the safety of the users in the area. While staying on kind of sustainability, this is a project I mentioned if you were in the TTF meeting in Manchester. It's called the Smart Renewables Project. This is a scheme that we worked on in collaboration with National Highways and with Kia. Basically, Kia deployed a whole load of infrastructure at the side of the road. So big solar panels, big wind turbines, VMS signs and all the rest of it. And basically what we do there is deliver almost motorway style technology, motorway style detection, but to actually a piece of the dark network. There was no power there, there was no comms there. And what we do is we collect the data from all of these different devices. You can see the road condition monitoring, air quality, CCTV and so on. Feed that back to our data platform we call Insight and actually manage the asset. Make sure that everything is working correctly. Make sure that we've got power and all the rest of it and make sure everything is working. Interestingly, part of that there, the Vision Zero thing, part of the scheme was also to make sure that anybody working on the scheme was safe. So there's a place for any maintenance workers to be able to work safely. So the whole scheme was looking at how can this thing be moved forward. Another one, 20 mile an hour zones. There's a lot of driving, certainly in Scotland and Wales, around the 20 mile an hour zones. You know, the 20 is plenty and so on. But local authorities sometimes struggle to decide how are they going to do this. It can be a bit of a whack-a-mole thing. If we put a restriction here, do problems pop up elsewhere? And we had a conversation with a local authority who had that exact problem. They wanted to know, so if I actually implement a 20 mile an hour zone here, will I have a problem somewhere else? Now, the problem is for them, this was county-wide. They are a huge county, very rural, and actually to survey all of those areas and actually put some equipment at the side of the road to measure these things would have been prohibitively expensive. So we had a conversation with them about our platform, part of our Insight platform that we call the Journey Time Solution. And this is what the Journey Time Solution looks like. And basically, it uses crowdsourced data. So you put a pin on a map and say that's point A. You put a pin on a map and say that's point B. And then we can tell you every minute, every 2 minutes, every 5 minutes, what's the journey time along that piece of road, or what's the average speed along that piece of road. And this local authority was saying, but I don't think that will work on our roads. Our roads are very quiet. We're very rural. I don't think you're going to be able to detect anything on these roads. So I gave them a challenge. I said, you pick 6 routes that you don't think we will have any data on, and let's just set up the journey time and leave it running for a couple of weeks and see whether we can actually see the journey time on those routes. So that's what they did, and I set it up for them, and I had my fingers crossed that actually it would work, and it did. At the end of the period, we sent them the report, and they could clearly see patterns of journey time. They could see that the speed varying at certain times of the day, and they could see that we were actually detecting real-life situations. So that's a really cost-effective way of being able to understand what's going on the network without having to deploy a whole load of technology. As I said, change is going to keep happening, and there's lots of things driving change, and we know about net zero and vision zero. But we also have to be careful not to knee-jerk reaction to these things. We need to consider, what's the longer-term thing? What's the next thing around the corner? And how can we make sure that these schemes are a success? I mentioned Stone Ferry Road there. To actually be able to monitor the number of active travel users is a really useful metric to know that the scheme is being successful. So that data, collecting the data as part of the scheme, can be really important. Kind of flying the flag a bit here for our industry. I actually think the UK is really well equipped with lots of very high quality, often SME businesses that can deliver really, really good solutions. At Clearview, I think, are one of those, but there's lots of us. And it's a constant race for innovation. We're constantly looking for what's the next thing, what's the next change that we need to be able to react to, what is it we need to consider to make sure that we've got the tools that we can give to you to enable you to manage your road network better. All of these SMEs have wide experience on deploying this type of scheme and managing these types of schemes. And if you just look at the breadth of things that we do as a business, I've touched on active travel, and I've touched on the environmental thing, but we do traffic measurement, delineation, hazard detection, parking, and so on. So there's a wide range of things there that we can work on, and it's actually really useful to get involved in these schemes. Last slide. The title of the presentation was Policy to Pavement. And I want to really kind of make a plea to all of the people in the room who are potentially at the moment coming up with a scheme. It might be on the back of an app. It might be just a rough idea of something. And I'd make the plea that please get us involved early on. If we're involved early on in these schemes, we can make a difference. This is how we worked with the guys in Hull. It was a very collaborative solution. At the beginning of it, the scheme that we deployed didn't look anything like that. It changed dramatically as we started to understand what the challenges were and what was the best technology we could deliver. It's important to get involved early on because we can help change the design. We can make sure that the design works so that it's not an expensive retrofit later on, really. And also, if we get to know about stuff early on, it might be we need to put something into our development pipeline. And it might take us 6 months, 12 months to develop something. So if we know about it early on, we can put that change into the pipeline so that we have a product or a service or a solution that actually makes sense at that point. So, in summary, involve us early because these policy changes will keep on coming. These changes that we're all having to react to will keep on happening. But by it being involved early, it will help us to bring that policy and implement it on the pavement. So that's me. Please, if you haven't come and seen us upstairs, we're upstairs. Come and talk to us. We're quite friendly people generally. But thank you for your time, and it's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you.